1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Wednesday show live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast sound check. Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Royal Blue Podcast. It's the 16th of July. We are live and I am your host, Ian Croll. Joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we've got Chris Beesley. Chris, only a podcast on Monday. Everton played yesterday, but back in the Royal Blue studio today. Yeah. How are things? All good?
Yeah, just about drying off from my trip to Accrington. I don't know if you saw me last night. Towel wrapped over me shoulders afterwards. It was kindly given to me by Daney, one of the Stanley ground staff there, because a bit like Old Trafford, really. They've got a bit of a leaky roof. I mean, the budget a bit tighter, I imagine, at Accrington at Old Trafford. Obviously, so Jim Ratcliffe likes to do his penny pinching, doesn't he? But yeah, to be fair, there's far fewer resources there at Accrington. Spurred a thought for all those Evertonians, actually, who outnumbered the Accrington fans. And they were, most of them were in the stand behind the goal, didn't have a roof on it. So, I thought I had it bad. But yeah, they were completely open to the elements. But at least they got to see Beto score that penalty in front of them. And they were in good spirits for us. Obviously, the first pre-season friendly for what's going to be a pivotal, historic season for the club.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, the away support, Everton following the players and the club in numbers. I guess just probably made up that Everton are back, really. Good to have proper football back rather than Club World Cup.
Yeah. I don't know how many people have been watching Chelsea's exploits and the rest of them there with Donald Trump. But actually, the MetLife Stadium, where I know you've been as well for the company, that's obviously where Everton's first game is, isn't it, in the Premier League Summer Series? So Blackburn Rovers on Saturday, not too far compared to obviously where we were last night, Joe and myself, and then obviously off to the States next week. But yeah, the fans, like I said, actually out any game, for the away fans to outnumber the home fans, it's incredible. But we expect that at Everton, no matter how many tickets they get allocated, they're always going to fill them. And they were in all sides, well, I think at least 3 sides of the ground last night in great numbers, enjoying themselves. And like you're saying, just glad to be football to be back, because for far too long now, both on and off the pitch, it's been tough times for Everton. But there really is a wave of optimism of what lies ahead now, and hopefully it can be a brand new dawn for the club. I mean, we've said this too many times, but there is an expectation that things can really change this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely a wave of optimism. Hopefully we can get into that today, bring a little bit of optimism into the podcast. I mean, just on a side note, Blackburn away this week. We'll go into a preview show on Friday, I'm sure, but fantastic away day, that Blackburn, Ewood Park. I think, is it the Darwin end?
Is that the one they've been allocated? Yeah.
Where the away fans usually go. Obviously, Blackburn haven't been in the Premier League for a long time, so we've missed out on going on a bit of an away trip there. But it holds quite a few thousand, I think, and because it's not too far away as well in terms of travelling there. Really decent away game to go to. So if I was going to pick one team or one of a couple of teams to come back up to the league next season, it would definitely be Blackburn, would be on my radar for an away game. Okay, today's agenda, the recruitment process is expected to be ramped up over the next week or two at Everton, fingers crossed, so we'll discuss that on today's show, as well as get into last night's 1-1 draw with Accrington Stanley. I managed to watch it on the Everton Pass or whatever it was called. So spent me money.
What do you think?
Yeah, well, we'll come on. We'll come on to that. Also worth mentioning on today's show, which we will do near the end of the show, that the Friedkin Group is set to announce the formation of a new company called Pursuit Sports. So our Business of Football writer Dave Powell has in the past hour put a tweet out on that. So go to his Twitter. If you just type in Dave Powell on the Twitter search bar, you'll be able to find out. But we'll discuss that at the end of the show and kind of what it means. We don't quite know ourselves what it means, but maybe we could have a little bit of an understanding of why they are doing it, and it maybe has something to do with the multi-club model in European football. So obviously the Friedkin Group are clearly optimistic about their teams, Everton and Rome, and Everton and Rome is trying to get into Europe next season. So we'll discuss that. As always, give us a thumbs up. Drop us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Your support is greatly appreciated. Get your comments in, get your questions in. Please take part in the show if you are watching on the live stream. Chris, we'll start with the Accrington game, 7:45 kickoff, 1-1 draw. Obviously, these games are geared towards fitness, pre-season, getting everyone up to match sharpness, up to scratch, but I guess, you still want to win these games. I know it doesn't mean anything, but just glad to have Everton back.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to lose them, do you?
No.
As much as the mantra is, it's all about fitness, and as always, when you play these lower division teams, they tend to be ahead of you in that respect. I think Accrington Stanley about a week ahead of Everton, who'd just come back off a grueling training trip to Scotland, which will hopefully be beneficial in the long term, but obviously means heavy legs at the moment. And when I spoke to Michael Keane after the game last night, he alluded to that, the fact that it had been a good workout in Scotland, but it meant that there were a lot of tired limbs out there. But I like the way that David Moyes set up in the players that he had available. It wasn't like a raft of changes. He kind of went about as strong as he could, and the cavalry are on the horizon. Obviously, might be some more back at Blackburn and more still, obviously, for the trip to the USA. But he went strong with what he had. There was a structure. Everyone was... It was interesting to see how Harrison Armstrong played, and we'll go into that in more detail in his role, because he played two different roles, didn't he? First half, second half was probably Everton's standout player. But there was a structure to it all. And like I said, you don't want it, especially... in this city, for those of us who remember, old enough to remember the old milk advert, the Accrington Stanley. I don't know, you're a little bit younger than me, but with the two Liverpool fans on there, the old Accrington Stanley. So you don't want to come a cropper, but obviously, like a lot of these teams, there's a stronger, obviously, Scouse contingent there with an Evertonian manager as well. Alan Stubbs, old number 2. So you don't want to slip up, do you? And it was an interesting game in respect that I thought Everton carved out the better chances possibly in the first half. Yusuf Chamiti had a couple of decent chances there. Header tipped over the bar in spectacular fashion, and then one shot was deflected wide. But then soft goal to concede, I thought, start the second half. And Everton were on the back foot for a while, but to be fair, Isaac Keefe looked very sort of encouraging. He came on, won the penalty, which was dispatched in emphatic fashion by Beto and honours even. Probably a fair result, really, and something... to build on. So we say, and it's true, that the result isn't the be-all and end-all, certainly in your first friendly of the summer. But you wouldn't want to be talking about Everton coming on the back of a defeat to a League Two opponent in any sort of circumstances this morning. So I'm glad that they at least got something out of it, and it's something for them to build on going forwards.
Yeah, I mean, you can, as Everton fans, it's kind of ingrained in us that we try and second guess the manager's team, don't we? I guess there was a lot of talk before, and I think Joe maybe alluded to it, that there was going to be a mix of youth and experience, which I guess there was, but it was a strong team, wasn't it? Maybe that was just because he just thought this was the best way to go. Obviously, like you said, you certainly doesn't matter about winning, but you certainly don't want to lose it. So were you surprised in that sense?
No, I think that David Moyes would always take seriously, and I mean, Sean Dyche didn't like too much chopping and changing. Although I wasn't at the game, but I remember Salford last season. They sort of got themselves into a decent position. Then he just chucked on the kids. So I don't know whether that was almost kind of a gesture, like look what I've got to work with here, I don't know. And Dave Moyes didn't do that, though, did he, last night? I said, obviously, it was a bit experimental again with the midfield and McNeil on the right again. And Harrison was sort of in an advanced position on the left in the first half and then much deeper in the second half after the substitutions. But you could kind of see everyone was, apart from that, and like the experimentation with the attacking midfielders, everyone was kind of in the recognised position, and the strongest players were starting in those positions. And then even when he tweaked it, obviously 3 changes at the start of the second half, and with Beto coming on, you're certainly not saying that the team's being weakened. Obviously, Jake O'Brien came on as well at half time. So it wasn't like when you get these raft of changes and no sort of pattern of play, and it disrupts the whole rhythm of the game. Didn't have any of that. There was a structure, and more subs came on later on. But yeah, it wasn't. It didn't sort of spoil the game because of that. There was a flow about it, and you could definitely see what the manager was intended on doing, playing a proper team, really. And to be fair, Accrington demanded that respect. They competed well, went ahead, and they certainly matched Everton. And that was something Michael Keane also said. He was impressed, really. Fair play to them as well. They made a real good game of it, and it was a decent workout to start with. And obviously, Accrington will be pleased with holding Everton, but Everton come out of that thinking, we'll probably have learned and benefited from that experience.
Just on Michael Keane, obviously he was the one doing the media rounds last night. He's always the first to step up and take accountability. I guess I know there wasn't much accountability that needed taking, but he was the one that spoke to the media last night. Just read out some of his quotes. To be honest, one that he spoke about when he was about extending his stay at the club, which I'll come on to later on. But with regards to the game last night and the draw, he basically said we played some decent stuff. I think in the final third we can be sharper, but the lads have worked really hard for 10 days. Even yesterday we had double sessions. You don't feel fresh and at your best, but that's what pre-season is for, and we got through it. These are the things that the fans don't see. All these double sessions. It must be tiring, especially if you've done that for nearly 10 days, 2 weeks, and then you go into a game there against a team. Okay, obviously short on quality, not up to scratch in terms of what quality Everton have, but in terms of sharpness and fitness, they're going to be ahead of Everton.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, under the previous regime, you had the infamous Gaffer's Day, didn't we? You Sean Dyche, but certainly there's no slacking under David Moyes either, as you mentioned there, Keane pointing out double sessions. So it's all about the long-term gains and building up your fitness after being off for 6 weeks or whatever it is. But yeah, you need to get your match sharpness. So it's all about that combination, really, of building things up in terms of your fitness and then getting your touch back. And I thought that, to be fair, I've said already with my piece with Michael this morning in my tweet that I put out, that I think was a really sensible piece of business to keep him on. He's a model pro, and what he did say, to be fair, also, is that he's not just signed on for another year just to sit on the bench. He knows there's a big challenge ahead of him with Jared Branthwaite, who was alongside him last night and interestingly led the team out as captain. Yeah. I just wonder whether that's something going forward for David Moyes to look at, because...
Was that a sign of things to come?
I wonder, because obviously Seamus isn't getting any younger, and although he retains the club captaincy, he's probably not going to be on the pitch a lot this season. And I don't think James Tarkowski needs to be wearing the armband to be a leader. He's just going to be a leader anyway. So it might be a way of sort of utilising, sort of developing Jared Branthwaite in terms of, he's obviously signed a new 5-year deal now, feels loved and respected at Everton and comfortable there, and obviously moving into the new stadium, it's something he's spoken about, his excitement with there. I just wonder, I spoke to Alan Stubbs a few weeks ago, and he was saying about how leaps and bounds Jared's coming on, but he needs to find his voice, and he feels that's something as a young centre-back he will get as he goes along. So, handing him the captaincy might be an interesting idea going forward. It's certainly something I wouldn't discount. So that was good having seeing that with Jared, but alongside him, Michael Keane. He knows it's going to be tough when those two are both fit. I mean, over 100 consecutive Premier League games, wasn't it, for James Tarkowski before the injury? If he can get himself back fit and firing. Jake O'Brien's in the mix. He played second half alongside Michael Keane. But, while Keane's under no illusions about how, the tough his task is, he's not just putting his feet up. He wants to be pushing there and trying to take his chance when he gets it. And it's been well covered, isn't it? The Manchester City game, he struggled down. He came on like it would have been really difficult circumstances for anyone to come in when as City were about to turn the screw there. But I mean, other than that, I don't think he's let anybody down, and he's always looked decent. He played really well towards the end of last season. And he's a good option to have and a model pro around the camp. So it was good to speak to Michael, and he spoke well as he always does, and there's explaining there for us, even ourselves, that we can't see what's going on in the inner circle there. We obviously got the little snippets of footage that the club were putting out of those one-on-one duels they were having up in Scotland and stuff like that, and obviously Keno's and the rest of them. I think Beto was particularly looked up for those battles. But it's just interesting insight what he says about the sessions there. It's maybe something we just think, oh, well, you should be back on it. But, there are circumstances behind those performances, really.
Listen, footballers these days, they're just fit all year round.
Yeah.
It's not like when you finish it's not when you finish the season, you go into the summer and then you come back and you've put like a couple of stone on. I just don't think that happens anymore. But there is a case for defence in terms of getting to that match sharpness, that match fitness, and those heavy legs after, I'm sure, some long and strong running sessions under David Moyes. So slightly disappointing that we didn't necessarily get the win. Don't get me wrong, I did feel when we went 1-0 down, I was like, here we go. But to be honest, we'll come on to it. We'll come on a couple of individual performances. But I thought when Beto came on, it shocked me praising Beto. But I thought he looked quite sharp, and he enabled the team to look a little bit more threatening, created that space. Was there any, when we'll come on to Beto, but was there anyone else who kind of stood out here? I mean, obviously you mentioned Brandwaite led the team out as captain. Wouldn't necessarily call it a statement of intent that he was the captain, because I'm not too sure who else could have took the captain's armband in that place. Obviously Keane was there, maybe
senior pro,
Garner, anyone else there, I'm not entirely sure. So it could be a sign of things to come with Brandwaite. Fingers crossed, because we obviously know the talent that he's got. Boomham, I thought he looked quite sharp early on, maybe gave the ball away a couple of times. However, he won the ball back a couple of times in some decent fashion, I thought. Yeah,
it's going to be an interesting one for Timo Boomham, because he had a very impressive pre-season last season, didn't he? When he first came in, everyone was like, oh, it's just a PSR workaround, blah, 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 and, convenient deal. But he looked really sharp last summer, and it was obviously his pre-season form which ensured that he was actually, if he ended up, he started the first 4 games of the season. Unfortunately, the 4 games they lost, and he was kind of taken out the firing line after that. And then a long way back for him, he had the injury, and he a lot of cameos under David Moyes, bit part performances. Although obviously one of them was ultimately very fruitful. Obviously setting up James Tarkowski for his Derby equaliser. But yeah, it's a big summer for Timo Boomham. I thought he did well in sort of fits and starts, like you say, sort of bursts and little bits and pieces that he produced, and it's certainly it's in his gift, really. He's got an opportunity here. I think that they are looking for more reinforcements in the engine room and in the centre of the park there. But with Abdoulaye Doucouré having moved on, I know obviously often would end up playing in the more advanced role. That there is probably there's an opening there, and obviously question marks over James Garner, and then as much as he signed a new deal, Idrissa Gueye, another one who's at an advanced stage of his career now. So interesting where things go out for Boone, and I don't know whether he might even be loaned out at some point, but it's an opportunity for him to sort of show the manager what he can do. And yeah, there were some decent bits and pieces. He's certainly got something about him a little bit different, I think, than the other central midfielders in terms of what he brings. I know when I spoke to him shortly after he signed for the club last season, he likes to think he can bring a bit of everything in that area. And yeah, some big weeks ahead for him, really, in terms of can he impress the manager again, because I think they are looking at another central midfielder, but he can ask the question himself.
Well, his target has got to be to establish himself within that starting 11 or within the reckoning, even if it's coming off on the bench. I mean, we've got a comment here from the Blues who says, Boomham's performance worried me, to be honest. His ball carrying was good, but we already knew that. Getting caught on the ball and sloppy passing against a League 2 team was the worry. Would you agree with that? I mean, I know when he kind of, I say burst onto the scene, but when he started a couple of games last season, you'd probably say his ball carrying was maybe one of his strengths. He was able to glide past players, but he did lose the ball a fair bit. I mean, if you look back at the was it the Bournemouth game where you know, it wasn't directly a fault, I don't think, but you know, he was blowing chunks, wasn't he? He was tired. He probably should have come off. Yeah. We've talked about that in the past, but I'd be honest with you, I'd be surprised if he was to go out on loan. I think he's just got to try and establish himself very quickly within that at least 14, 15 core players, and we know injuries and suspensions played a part, so he's got to be ready when the time comes. For me,
I wouldn't say I was worried. There was no alarm bells with me. Obviously, like you say, a few moments where he can be a bit sharper, but we've even said that. How many times we've said that even about players like Idrissa Gueye over the years, as much as the good work he does. You know, his passing can be off, and obviously the same with Decore at times. That was a big criticism that he had. So
I think he's technically better than Decore, I'd say.
Yeah, he's a different type of sort of skill set, isn't he? And they're not like for like, as it were. The big period coming up for him, but I think that depending on what Everton can do, and I think that David Moyes say after I signed Mark Travers this week that he was looking to bring in 4 to 6 more new faces at least. If Everton do have that bigger squad, then maybe it can be a case of more players coming in and out rather than just relying on a smaller core that you have to always turn to. That there can be different opportunities, because I think that was something, especially under the previous manager, Everton, obviously guilty of not being able to change in-game situations, or unwilling to, or unable to, and not having those different options. And maybe it can be a role for Irabunum to carve out for him, given that he is a bit slightly different than those other players in his position.
And Beto came on for Schmidt. For me, when he came on, he just looked a threat. I think our midfield was looking for him every single time they got the ball, and he was making the runs. Obviously scored the penalty, but what a penalty.
Yeah.
Emphatic.
Yeah, I suppose they're the ones, aren't they? Pre-season, the pressure's off, hopefully.
Short run up, which scared me a little bit, to be honest, but it went in the back of the net.
Yeah, not so bad. Short run up. I'd rather have that maybe than the stop start. Yeah. I don't like that. You know, Richarlison did a few of those, didn't he? He looks really up for it, doesn't he, at the moment, Beto? Because I don't know if people have been sending him like clips of Tony Scott or anything like that. But
we'll get Tony back on the pod. See what he's got to say.
No. He obviously did the challenges there, doesn't he? The club have just gone on, spent big money on their first new face of the summer, because obviously Charlie Alcaraz was already there, and Tierno Barry, and the challenge is on, isn't it, for Beto? We understand there's potentially interest from him from outside. He's admitted himself he could have easily gone in January. That was a distinct possibility, but obviously he ends up as Moyes' only fit striker at one point, and enjoyed a purple patch. I think he's in the reckoning, like we mentioned already, those clips of him up in Scotland. He was up against Mikalenko, wasn't he, in those one-on-ones with a little goal, and he was almost demanding the ball come back to him and would do it again, and just looks really sort of determined at the moment, Beto. I mean, even before he came on, he was first out of both the teams for the second half. He was coming on as a sub, but he was out there warming up, determined, looked really sort of wanting to make an impact, and he did do that. I know it was only like the penalty, but he stood up, he was confident, and like you say, he asked a question a few times in terms of having a few shots and really sort of trying to take the game to Accrington. So I think he realises now, because he spent 18 months basically under Sean Dyche, and he's sort of Dominic Calvert-Lewin's understudy, getting bits here and there, and then the brief experiment of playing them together, and that didn't work, and he wasn't really getting any sort of rhythm at all. But okay, it was because of circumstances. But he ends up being like the main man spearheading the attack under Moyes for a time at the end of last season. And I think he, like all of Everton's players, he wants to be part of this exciting new era at the club. And there's an opportunity here. I mean, Tierno Barry, it's been spoken about a lot on this podcast, as much as he's a lot of promise for the future and a lot of potential there. He's coming in with no Premier League experience. So certainly come the start of the season, Beto could feel, he's in pole position to be spearheading Everton's attack at this point in time.
I definitely think he's right now.
Yeah.
Things can change, but with Calvert-Lewin gone and Beto coming to the fore. Obviously, Barry only just coming to the club, and Schmidt's still finding his feet even after all these years. Beto is the number one striker.
Yeah.
Whether we bring someone else in, I don't know. It will be interesting to see. What struck me, and it wasn't really anything like a big, revelation or anything like that, but the likes of McNeil, Patterson, Schmidt, it was just good to see them get some minutes because let's face it, McNeil, got fit towards the back end of the season, but hadn't played a lot. We know Patterson hadn't played that much as well. Schmidt, again, another player who hadn't played, but it's good to see them starting the games. Is there anyone out of them three, or anyone even in the squad that I haven't mentioned, that you think this is kind of like now or never for their Everton career? They've got to have a good pre-season and kind of like hit the ground running a little bit at the start of the season.
Oh yeah, you've mentioned him just now, Nathan Patterson. I think missed a couple of big chances last night, to be fair, Pato.
He ballooned one over the bar, didn't he, where you thought, that's a nice careless shot, just inside the area. I thought that could have been executed a little bit better.
Yeah, because on the one hand, he'd done really well. Got the overlap, and I think it was young Harrison Armstrong who set him up, and should have at least worked the keeper, got it on target. Because that's a curious thing, isn't he? He's never scored, has he, either, for Everton?
You can tell how gutted he was and frustrated he was with the chance that he missed.
Yeah, and then, obviously, to be fair to him, like he'd done against Arsenal last season, he ended up having to play left-back second half, because as we've been keep banging on about Mikalenko's the only recognised option there, especially now Ashley Young's gone. And he had to play left back second half, but he actually had another decent chance cutting inside. Probably not as good as his first one, but it was another one he would have liked to have done better with. So whereas it's like the same old Pato in some respects, in that he looks really good going forward. He can get it, especially against like League Two teams like that. He can sort of push up and get in those positions. But then a couple of times you wonder, has he just been caught out of position a bit there? Or, like I said, they'd be disappointed he didn't do better with those two chances, especially the one in the first half when Harrison Armstrong set him up. So, really, I think it probably is, if you want to call it that or whatever, then now or never in terms of... You'd have thought he'd actually got more chances under Moyes back end of last season, but didn't get probably as many as you'd have thought. And... it's well sort of a well trodden path on this podcast with all of our pundits, really. When we've kind of said, I think Gav's spoken a lot about it as well. But if he's not kind of doing it this next month or so, I just wonder what happens in for his future.
I guess it'll all just come down to whether we go in the market for a right back. We've obviously already tried to go in for Kenny Tete, who was a experienced right back. That didn't come off. You would have thought if that had come off, Patterson's Everton future, he would have been looking for another club immediately. So do the club now work with Patterson, try and improve him if they can, or do they go back in the market for another loan signing, or do they go and splash some cash on who's going to be a first choice right back? Because who is the first choice right back? It's a strange one, isn't it, really?
Yeah, because it was Jake O'Brien at the end of last season,
probably
wasn't
still
it?
Jake O'Brien now, isn't it?
Yeah, it probably is, isn't it? Because if you think, I've just been talking about Michael Keane and his aspirations, but you would imagine, because they have been for so long now, that Tarkowski and Branthwaite is the first choice centre-back partnership when both fit and available. So Jake O'Brien did really well. It was a left field move by David Moyes. Nobody expected it. Jake O'Brien's not had a sniff under Dyche, despite the big money they paid for him, certainly for Everton in their position last summer from Leon. And then he finds a way getting Jake O'Brien in the side. And let's not forget that Ashley Young was getting a lot of plaudits. He'd been one of the steadier players in what had been a hugely disappointing first half of last season. So, O'Brien probably is, isn't it? It's weird that they've got several options, and you've got Seamus Coleman, obviously Everton's best right back of the Premier League era. I don't think anyone's disputing that one. And obviously the appearance holder in the Premier League now for Everton, most games. And then you got Nathan Patterson, who was paid big money from Rangers to be his long-term successor. But you don't imagine it's not either of those two for obviously very different circumstances. Coleman in his autumn years now, and great influence on and off the pitch, but mostly not got an on the pitch role these days. And Patterson has really struggled to get that consistency. So it probably is Jake O'Brien at this point in time. Like you say, it might have been very different if they'd have got the Kenny Tete deal over the line. I thought it would have been a sensible piece of business. I said that at the time, but the fact that he's turned around and decided to stay at Fulham, move on. Not losing any sleep over that one. I think it would have been a sound deal, but the fact it hasn't happened, I'm sure David Moyes is okay too. He'll have moved on from that, but it'd be interesting to see if he does make another move between now and the end of the window on a recognised right back, or whether it's still sort of Jake O'Brien as that was it a square peg in a round hole, albeit one who's done really well.
Yeah, I mean the Tete deal would have eased things slightly rather than muddied the water, which it's done now. I think Tete would have come in and fought for his place alongside Jake O'Brien, but obviously we know Jake O'Brien can play as a centre back as well. That is his natural position, and it would have just left Patterson looking for another club, in my opinion. To the club, as mentioned, do they go back out in the transfer market now and try and sign someone, whether it's a right back to take that position, that is yours, you are the first choice right back, or is a backup or something like that. I don't know. We will see. Moving on then, obviously you mentioned Isaac Heath won the penalty, Chris, and Harrison Armstrong, obviously highly sought after and considered to be huge potential among Everton fans, Chris. I think with Harrison Armstrong, I think he did well. He's almost in the middle of kind of needing to go out on loan, but also Everton need him as like a regular player. But is he going to get the minutes that he needs to develop? So I think he had that chance, didn't he? Was it first half? I think it was first half where he kind of curled one. Yeah. And it was a really decent save from the keeper. It was kind of like nearly top bin, to be honest. It shows to me that he's got that sort of stuff in his locker, and that's the type of player that you want in and around your squad. Again, I'm glad I'm not making a decision, but do you send him out on loan, or do you keep him in that, your core 14, 15 players who's going to get a game, maybe not get a game all the time, but when he comes on from the bench, he needs to be ready as well.
Yeah, I suppose it all depends on who Everton get or don't get between now and the end of the window, isn't it? In that we know that they're crying out for more sort of attacking midfielders who've got end product, because as much as he worked hard, Jack Harrison and Jesper Lindstrom weren't cutting it last season. It's curious to see, Everton getting linked with anyone and everyone, but there's been talk about that. That Moyes does rate Harrison and might want to bring him back, but for me, you've got to be targeting more end product in those areas, and if they're not able to get who they want or the calibre, I mean, hopefully they do, but I think Harrison Armstrong's got to be part of the conversation because he's looking so promising at the moment. Got to remember, he's still only 18 years of age, and it's not like he has to be a part of the Everton first team just now. I mean, on the one hand, David Moyes has handled the most precocious talent the club have ever produced in Wayne Rooney. He was even younger, obviously 16 when he started, and he handled, Moyes played that perfectly, really, and in terms of Rooney's development. And then the other side of the coin, you've got someone who, in terms of the role he plays in the team, is very similar. Leon Osman to Harrison Armstrong, in that was a late developer, and ironically also had a long spell at Derby County as well as Carlisle United before he finally got a chance. Really, he was about 22, which was really sort of late in relative Premier League terms. So he'll have an idea of the pathway he wants for Armstrong, and then he'll see what manager will pick up on what he sees in the games ahead now and who he can bring in the transfer market. But it is an interesting one, like you say, in the terms of, I know one of my friends from university is a Derby County season ticket holder, and they love him down there. They'd love to have him back. So whether he goes there again or to another championship club to continue his development, or like you say, have a bit more sort of a bit part role at Everton, because you can't. He's not. He's not at the level of a Rooney or even at this stage of even a Ross Barkley the way he was. So he's not going to walk into the starting 11 necessarily. I mean, he's got the potential to, but at this stage, as much as he was the main, he sort of looked like the best, most creative threat last night. I don't think he's in the starting 11 yet for Everton, but certainly a lot of promise over a season. He could do. he could kick on and certainly do a lot. So yeah, I don't. I think if I was David Moyes now, I'd be keeping my options open, just saying, let's see, young Harrison, you show me what you can do. Let's see what we can do in terms of the players we can bring in. And I know that the manager is really keen, as you would expect. As I said on Monday, I was speaking to somebody from the club, and he wants to do the business, but you've got to get the right deal. Isn't it? It's no good just getting say, oh well, we've got to get all these players in, so we'll just bring in X, Y, and Z. If they're not the ones you want, you've got to wait for these deals to sort of materialise and the opportunities to present themselves. So I think it all depends really on what happens, but he can control his own destiny to a certain extent, in that if he produces the performances, whether it's at Blackburn or the 3 games in the Premier League Summer Series, that sort of make the manager go, well, I can't really be sending this lad out again. We need him here. You know, it's another one who's it's in his power to a certain extent to sort of show the manager what he can do.
I couldn't agree more. And I think sometimes when you look at players in that ilk, the creative players who are young and developing, they're obviously kind of going to make mistakes as they go on. You have to question, is it right to put them in that situation where the pressure is going to be high, where you need them to create, you need them to score goals? Maybe he'll flourish under that pressure. Maybe he wants that pressure. I think one thing's for certain is that he'll just want to play football games. He'll want the minutes. So I guess it's with a lot of things that we're talking about at this moment in time, it is kind of just watch this space, isn't it, really? Gavin Cunningham says, Armstrong looked such an upgrade on James Garner yesterday. Me and Connor spoke about James Garner at length in last week's podcast, and maybe you could say that we were slightly critical. I don't know whether people who watched that would agree or disagree. We just know James has got a lot more to give. Maybe with a few more quality additions around him, he can do that. But is that slightly harsh on him there? Armstrong looked such an upgrade on James Garner yesterday. As we mentioned, Garner there was one of the most senior players who started the game.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. Joe Thomas and I were discussing it after the game, and because like you said, we know he's got it in his locker. We've seen those moments where whether it's the slide rule pass to Beto or that lovely finish the season before, was it against Aston Villa. He can be more than just a harrier or a workhorse in midfield. You know, he can pick a pass as well. He can do that, and I think Harrison Armstrong's a bit different in that he is someone who can be more that creative attacking force. But like we said, second half he played that more withdrawn sort of role in the middle. So yeah, I think it's probably it's certainly nowhere near the sort of stakes that Nathan Patterson's at. But I think I wouldn't even probably say a crossroads, but it's a big summer again. Big season perhaps for James Garner. Yeah.
Sorry, just to interrupt. You can carry on, but in the fact that his contract is up as well.
Yeah.
Next season.
So yeah, it's like which way do we go? Like Vitaly Mikalenko, because I know there's a lot of people at Manchester United were very disappointed when they let Garner go. I know we've been on loan at Nottingham Forest for 18 months, but a lot of their fans still rated him very highly. So yeah, want to see more from Garner, but I think he's got it in his locker, and hopefully he can do it. I know he's had a few injury problems, hasn't he, already? Back injury, stuff like that. And hopefully he can keep fit. And as we've already said, they are probably a body light, at least, in the centre of the park there. So, yeah, it's a chance where he needs to step up. And I know he can do it. I think that's been a frustration with a lot of Everton players, on their day. And it's like what we said about Dom as well. That they can be really good, but just need the top players do that most weeks rather than every few weeks. And I think Garner's not alone in that respect. But yeah, you've got it in him. So hopefully he gets better again. Talking about the potential recruitments, but if you've got more, sort of better creative players on the wings or people to feed the ball to, maybe that can sort of bring the best out of him as well.
It's just crazy how he divides opinion so much, because we've got one comment here from Spanny88. Garner is a ghost every game. However, one comment which is kind of stuck in my head from one of the last couple of podcasts was, I can't remember who it was, so if you're on the podcast, bring it up again. Someone said that Garner's return to the team last season coincided with Everton's upturn in form. So you'd have to go back and double check that, but I'd probably say Everton's upturn in form coincided with the return of David Moyes
Moyes.
more than anything. So, like I say, the podcast last week was titled Everton's most divisive player.
Wow.
And
Is that what
I
he's
just
become?
think he is. But not the problem is the good thing is we believe that he has got something to offer. So, yeah, well, again, we'll see what happens. Watch the space with regards to Ghana. I guess he is one of the mainstays, or has been one of the mainstays in Moyes' team over the past 15, 16 games, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely. So he's taking on DCL's mantle now, as he is the most divisive player.
Well, I'm sure there's a couple out there
to take on that role.
Beto's still up there, I think.
Right, okay.
No,
You're fighting him for it.
Get Tony Scott on. I'm sure we can have an argument or two. I mean, there's a lot of just going back to Beto here, just looking at some of the comments that I've made notes of. A lot of love for Beto. Chris Gaspipe says Beto has improved, which is what we asked of him. And another comment, Beto is always determined, regardless of the competition. All he needs is an opportunity. I mean, you kind of touched upon that there, and you look like ready. Do you feel like he feels at home now because he has become I mean, the goals have helped, obviously, but somewhat of a fan favourite.
Yeah, he's always been a player, hasn't he? Even when those hard times for him and he was struggling, and he's like tears in his eyes at times, wasn't he?
After the Fulham game when he scored, remember the last minute goal, the emotion there.
Yeah, heart on his sleeve, and I think Evertonians respond to that, don't we? We talk about, there's an entirely different podcast, can't we? What you want in an Everton player, obviously, is just that fight, that determination, not to go hiding at any point. But all that is like a big heart. It's like the supporters, isn't it? If they can see a player sort of embodying the sort of the emotions and the passions that they've got, they'll respond to that. And Beto does do that. Whatever you think of him as a football talent, he's that kind of player who responds from that passion from the fans and give it back. He really, he really feels it, doesn't he? For better or for worse. So. He looks like he's got the bit between his teeth, and hopefully that can be a good thing for Beto and a good thing for Everton going forward. Because if you've got two decent, rather than having the position like DCL's having another goal drought and then bring Beto in or whatever and see who does it. So if you've got two decent options, him and Tino Barry, battling for the shirt and bringing the best out of each other, and I know that can be only be good for everyone. And he appears up for the fight. He looks ready for it. He's like he said, he could have been out the club by now, but he's been given this second opportunity. The fates have decreed that for him, and he looks like he wants to take it. It's like that anyone would at this point in time. Like I said, we've all been through a lot here. We've all been through so much disappointment, frustration, near misses. We have to rattle them all off the times. It could have gone south for Everton, but they've come through that now, and Beto's come through that now, and I think he wants to play his part in that.
Danny Church says, I will get behind any player that puts on our shirt. All I ask is that they play with their heart and desire for our club. We're in a rebuilding phase after Mashiri and Dyche. I think we'll come on to it when we talk about some of the quotes that Moyes has come up with over the past week or so. Mm-hmm. But the rebuilding phase, I think it is important to stress that it's not just going to be this window, is it? We might have an okay window. We might have a poor window. Hopefully that doesn't have a detrimental impact to our, league campaign. But the January or the summer window next year might be the one where you might see a bit of more of a progression, basically.
Yeah, because at the moment you're kind of selling a dream, aren't you? You're not got a great deal to back it up. And what you could do, you can back it up saying, look how they improved second half of last season under Moyes, who took over when they're just 1 point above the relegation zone, and then obviously they finished way above that, up in 13th, and so it was probably about as high as they could have finished given the starting position that Moyes inherited. So you could say that to them, and obviously then you show them the new stadium, Hill Dickinson Stadium. The fact that for the first time since 1987 you're going to be playing in front of crowds of over 50,000 and all of that, and obviously the ambitions of the Freaking Group, but it is kind of selling a dream at the moment. So we saw with Liam Delap, who's just won the World Club Cup with Chelsea, but wasn't playing a prominent role in that. I mean, he's the reasons why he's gone back to Chelsea, Champions League football, rescues his old Man City academy boss as well. So it's probably pulls like that. But I know, and I've spoken to the sort of people connected within the lap camp, and they were very impressed with the way Moyes conducted himself and the way that he sold Everton to them. Maybe Chelsea were always going to win out, but Everton made a decent fisted at, but obviously couldn't get that one over the line. So you're kind of trying to sell a dream at the moment. Whereas if you were to kick on this season and do well, I said on Monday, I think with a fair wind and if the right players are signed, Everton can aim for top half this season. And then if you have a season like that where you're not fighting relegation or half sort of looking over your shoulder, maybe then the real sort of quality players might say, oh, well, Everton's a good option again. And kind of they've built on this move from Goodison Park now and we want to be part of that. Whereas this summer, you're still kind of in that transition phase and trying to convince people. I think as much as us here in the Merseyside Royal Blue bubble are kind of feeling that, maybe outside of that, it'd take a bit longer sort of to permeate through and sort of for the message to get across. And it might be a case of, in certain respects, having to keep your powder dry until next summer if you actually show the fruits of your labour this year.
I mean, I can understand the apprehension of how small the squad is. We've even spoke about it ourselves, how slim it is, threadbare. Obviously, Moyes was still able to put out a team yesterday, barring the goalkeeper, which was pretty much senior. Obviously, he's not going to be able to do that every single game in the next couple of weeks. He's going to need more options. We know Pickford and Dye.
Just a gaze back as well.
Yeah, obviously, thanks for that. Yeah. More players coming back who've been on international duty, and then we obviously know we do need to sign players. I do find it interesting. We know this is almost a different David Moyes since his first stint. He's a bit more bullish when talking about, expectations, bringing in players. Obviously, following the Mark Travis signing, this was his second quote with regards to bringing in new additions. So he just said, we are continuing to work on bringing more players in ahead of the start of the season. That was kind of the second time he'd said that, because on the July the 9th, following the Barry signing, he said, I'm hoping to make more additions in the coming weeks. So I don't know. Look, this summer is hugely challenging for the amount of players that have left, being out of contract, and that we've had to kind of retain. The problem that I see is, well, the challenge is not a problem, is that we need to find the balance of bringing in quality over quantity. Yet we kind of do need to bring in players to add squad depth as well. But say if you bring in 3-4 players in who are just there to make up the numbers, and you sign them on 3 to 4 year deals, you're just stuck with those players who are inadequate for the team. So priority positions, I think this summer at least, as long as the priority positions are addressed, which we've discussed, that I'd say certainly a right winger, maybe even 2, a centre midfielder, even 2, a left back, whether that's someone to be an understudy to Mikalenko or whatever, and then depending on the Patterson situation, a right back as well. I think they're the ones that have got to be addressed, and then you might be able to bring in 1 or 2 players kind of who will be able to do a job and just make up the numbers a little bit. You just don't want a handful or 6, 7, 8 players who are just there to make up the numbers. It's the worst thing that you could do. Yeah,
I think you've got to sort of attempt to raise the bar, don't you, rather than just filling it out. That's the problem, isn't it, when you've had such an overhaul of players? And on the one hand, it's created a clean slate, isn't it, with so many out of contract ones gone, big earners, and that in that respect, and people coming to the end of their deals. The money's available, but I think people kind of know that. And that's probably why it was. They were patient with Tierno Barry, didn't they? As we've spoken, they didn't pay the buyout clause to 34 million, but they managed to negotiate that one down, trying to get the deals that are right. So that the numbers need filling, but you can't just have there'd be problems in the Farhad Machete, wouldn't it? Just spending willy-nilly. Not going to be like that with the freaking group. Moyes isn't going to be like that, going back to those bad old days. And this new sort of recruitment structure that's been brought in around them aren't going to be that. It's actually interesting. A thing Joe and I were discussing last night. See, Kevin Felwell and his legacy kind of gets under close scrutiny all the time. But it's interesting to see Mohamed Kudus and Morgan Gibbs-White, 2 players who Kevin Felwell wanted for Everton, going for the best part of about 110 million between them. Those 2 will be both on the way to Tottenham Hotspur for massive money. So you've got to get that. You've got to get the right players. I mean, I'd be comfortable. Everton need to, as you mentioned, those same positions. I'd more or less agree with you there. Certainly, right wing has to be top of the bill for me. Just getting those right ones, and maybe if it takes a bit longer to get them through, so be it. But the problem is, remember all those years ago when Moyes was at the last day of the window and he brought in Franny Jeffers, Nigel Martin, as a Kilban. I think there was another one, was it McFadden, all on the same day. You don't want to be doing that.
No, you don't want to be doing that.
You want them on the plane to the USA. Hope, if you can. Obviously, there's probably going to be some who you can't get until towards the end of the window. And as much as he's been linked for a long time now, people like Jack Grealish, I mean, it'd be huge, wouldn't it? But whatever you think about him, those kind of deals where they might be the back end of the window. But you want to be getting some of them being part of the group so they can integrate both as a footballing point of view and as like a teammate point of view, from a social point of view, being part of the group. You want to have them on that plane, don't you, before you head out to New York?
Bearing in mind then what you've said, because we've got a comment here from Mark Foster, so this is the last comment before we go on to the freaking situation. Mark says, 9 points are there for the taking before the transfer deadline. Each point has the same value as all the other points this season. We need a right winger and a centre mid in for the first 3 games, which we all agree with. However, he's also said anything else would be a fail. Now, based on that, if our number one right wing target, say for instance it's Kubo, the Japanese winger, say he was the number one target, and we know we want him, but for some reason, we can't get him now, or we've got to wait till January or even next summer. Would you wait, or would you go to your plan B, who is obviously in theory a less of a player than what Kubo is, because he's your plan B?
Okay, if we're using Kubo, my understanding is that he's kind of being made available now, so maybe it's a bit of a cheat. But I think you got to have somebody this summer for Everton. With Everton's circumstances, yeah, you can always upgrade next summer after the impressive season when you're offering that European football. But
I just think it's interesting, isn't it? Like you go for your plan B, your plan C. Based on what you're saying, your plan A is not available. Is not going to be as good as your plan A. I know that doesn't necessarily work all the time. Sometimes your plan B works out better than your plan A. Sometimes.
Yeah. But whoever that is, I think they're just so light on that side. I know the left-sided players can come across. McNeil did it again last night. But I think you need to get a natural right winger in there. It's just such a priority, really, for Everton. And especially with the question marks, as we've always discussed, over the right-back position behind it. You want to be getting someone decent in that right wing, whether it's plan A or plan B. I think that other areas, less so. Well, for me, that it's kind of like a sort of a glaring area, that attacking right hand side of the pitch. As I said, as much as some of the left sided players can come over and do a job, you want to be filling that sooner rather than later.
Our friend Tazul Islam has gone in on Jack Harrison and said, as long as Plan B isn't Jack Harrison.
Wow.
Okay. Final part of the podcast before we finish off. I'm kind of just going to read this off because we don't know too much about it. But the Freaking Group are set to announce the formation of a new company called Pursuit Sports, which we kind of understand could be a way of them getting around issues with multi-club models in European football. So obviously the Freakins are optimistic that both Everton and Roma are going to be in Europe next season. Our Business of Football writer Dave Powell has put out a tweet, and we understand he's doing an article on the Liverpool Echo website. I don't think it's up yet. I've just checked.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for that. But basically, Dave has tweeted, creation of Pursuit Sports in US by Freaking Group, a move to bring operations of existing sporting assets under one roof. Not a precursor to a multi-club model. Each team continues to operate independently. The Freaking Group wants to add a Major League US team as well, to obviously to their portfolio. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I can't say to you, what does this all mean, Chris, because we don't know, but what does it mean?
Yeah, well, Dave can iron out those finer details for us, but yeah, it's obviously, you don't want to be caught, do you? Like the way we've seen that debacle this summer with Crystal Palace and Olympique Lyonnais, Obviously, ironically, it all surrounds John Textor, the man who said he was 24 hours away from buying Everton before the Freaking Group came back in. So you don't want that happening. We've seen it with other clubs and the same owners. Obviously, Palace getting bumped, going down to the Conference League, through no fault of their own, really, because of Olympique Lyonnais got reinstated and, initially relegated from the French top flight because of their finances, but now won the appeal and they're staying in Europe and it's Palace who go down. So the Freaking Group, it seems like a prudent move. As you and I and a lot of our viewers might not understand the finer points of this, but you can see it's got to be something savvy, isn't it, if they're trying to avoid these kind of pitfalls that have beset John Textor and Palace and obviously it's not affecting Leon now because they're the ones who kind of got away with it, as it were, after their reprieve. But you don't want to be falling foul of that because if it's even with Forest with their owner, and I don't know what you had to do with Olympiacos. So it seems to be a move to sort of help them in that one because it's got to be the aspiration. I think Roma have been kind of at least semi-regularly, if not regularly, qualifying for Europe in recent years. They're kind of already there or thereabouts. I know they recovered well after a poor start last season, obviously, and they went through 4 managers last year. But for Everton, it's not necessarily on the horizon. I mean, we talked about that, I wouldn't say tongue-in-cheek, but, it was still probably... it's going to be tough for Everton to get into Europe, but there are more teams qualifying for Europe these days. There are more openings there, so why not? So, don't get caught cold by this if, Everton were to qualify for Europe in 12 months' time or maybe 2 years' time or whatever, that they don't fall foul of these problems that have beset Palace because of the multi-club model. So maybe it's work around that. I'm sure Dave will clarify it all, make it all crystal clear for us.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Sorry, that's the thing, isn't it? Because we've had a comment here saying, is there anyone who understands that tweet? And I think the answer to that is no, not really. I think Dave's put out some facts of exactly what is, either potentially happening or happening. And I think Dave's off doing a little bit of research himself and trying to find exactly what's going on. So I guess it's another case of watching this space with regards to that. I don't know. I can't see it impacting Everton on a day-to-day basis or anything like that. So we'll see what the ramifications are of sports or pursuit sports.
It's interesting, though, what he says, that bit about them wanting to buy more teams, isn't it, though, in the fact that they want to get into that. We've seen now with the Freakings coming in, was that the deal that actually made half the Premier League under US ownership? I think that might be the case now, where 10 of the 12, it was last season. The clubs had American owners, and the fact that they want to get another team back there in the States, whatever sport that ends up being, that they're keen to sort of push this further. So they've got plenty of resources behind them, and just hopefully they've got that savviness to take Everton onto the next level, where on and off the pitch. Very sort of hands-off owners on the face of things since they've come in. Obviously, it was a bit curious, I thought, that the fact that Dan Freakin hasn't even attended a game yet. Whether he'll change that at the new stadium, I don't know. But he's leaving. He's kind of leaving the decisions to the experts, as it were. He's leaving the football decisions to the football people, and they've got a new structure in that respect. And obviously, Mark Watts is on a more day-to-day basis, running the club as a representative of the Friedkin group. But they certainly seem to have a strategy in place for what they're doing, and hopefully Everton can benefit from that business savvy.
Positive signs, without a doubt. Any final thoughts then, Chris, before we shoot off?
Obviously, we'll be back. Joe and I'll be back at Blackburn come Saturday. I know I'm not in Friday, so I won't be part of that show. But the Echo, we're the only outlet who were always there. We were there at Accrington Stanley last night. We were there at Blackburn, and We'll be there. We'll be there following the Blues every kick at the Premier League Summer Series in the US. So yeah, stick for us for all your coverage.
Absolutely. And Friday's show is hopefully going to consist of me, Joe Thomas, and Gav Buckland. So hopefully some movement on transfers by then, and we can certainly preview the Blackburn game on Saturday as well. That is all for today's show. Please remember to give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Drop us some 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Most importantly, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks to Chris. I've been Ian Croll, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.